Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. In today's video, we're going to be discussing something that exists in both the Harry Potter world and our own world. Something that most of us want, something that drives economy, and something that certainly pushes some to madness. I am of course talking about money. Gold, shekels, galleons, sickles, knuts, pounds, dollars, you name it. The wizarding world is certainly different than our own muggle world in a lot of ways, but one way that they're almost completely the same surrounds the structure of their economy. Economies are systems of making and trading things of value divided into goods, physical things, and services, things done by people. It assumes there is medium of exchange, which in the modern world is a system of finance. So whether you're muggle or magical, in order to obtain goods or services, a medium of exchange is required, and this is where money comes in. Depending on where you live, everyone uses different forms of currency, and in the wizarding world, this currency is comprised of galleons, sickles, and knuts, in depreciating order. Galleons, being the largest, are worth about 17 sickles, or 493 knuts. But that's enough about types of money. That's not the focus of this video. The main focus is who is the richest. That's right, just like our own world, there is an uneven distribution of money in the wizarding world. There are rich families, poor families, and some people in between. The distribution of this wealth and its inequality is called the wealth gap, which is in essence an unequal distribution of assets. Using the United States as an example, a 2013 study showed that the top 10% of families accounted for 76% of the nation's entire wealth, and that the bottom 50% of families accounted for just 1% of the nation's total wealth. This is a horrifying statistic, but something tells me that there's something similar going on in the Harry Potter universe. Based on what we see in the series, there seem to be an awful lot of vaults full of gold, as well as an awful lot of wizards doing everything they can just to get some of the scraps. I think that a lot of this has to do with old money. That is, money that has been passed down for generations in certain wizarding families. To add to all of this, there seems to be an awful lot of emphasis placed on money and status in the series. It's emphasized time and time again that the Weasleys are poor. Think my name is funny, do you? Well, no need to ask yours. Red hair and a hand-me-down robe, you must be a Weasley. That lot won't come cheap, said George, with a quick look at his parents. Lockhart's books are really expensive. Well, we'll manage, said Mrs. Weasley, but she looked worried. Let's see. Red hair, vacant expressions, tatty second-hand book. You must be the Weasleys. Inversely, Harry's immense wealth seems to be constantly mentioned. Inside were mounds of gold coins, columns of silver, heaps of little bronze knuts. Harry said nothing. He felt a bit awkward. Stored in an underground vault at Gringotts in London was a small fortune that his parents had left him. Harry felt even worse when they reached his vault. He tried to block the contents from view as he hastily shoved handfuls of coins into a leather bag. But just as the Weasleys certainly aren't the poorest, Harry certainly isn't the richest, even despite the constant mentions of his innumerable wealth. So who is the richest? Is it perhaps the Malfoys? They always seem to be praised as wealthy individuals, right? As it turns out, the generational wealth that the Malfoys possess started with a wizard named Armand Malfoy, who arrived in Britain with William the Conqueror. Having rendered unknown, shady, and almost certainly magical services to King William I, Malfoy was given a prime piece of land in Wiltshire, seized from local landowners, upon which his descendants have lived for 10 consecutive centuries. Having land ownership so early on in history is certainly an advantageous start. However, as it turns out, part of the Malfoy wealth came from muggles. The result is that they are one of the richest wizarding families in Britain, and it has been rumoured for many years, though never proven, that over the centuries the family has dabbled successfully in muggle currency and assets. Over hundreds of years they have managed to add to their lands in Wiltshire by annexing those of neighbouring muggles, and the favour they carried with royalty added muggle treasures and works of art to an ever-expanding collection. Historically, the Malfoys drew a sharp distinction between poor muggles and those with wealth and authority. Until the imposition of the Statute of Secrecy in 1692, the Malfoy family was active within high-born muggle circles, and it is said that their fervent opposition to the imposition of the statute was due, in part, to the fact that they would have to withdraw from this enjoyable sphere of social life. So they were wealthy in both worlds. To add to this, in the Deathly Hallows, the Death Eaters and Voldemort hold their meeting at the Malfoy Manor, and it certainly doesn't sound like a building to scoff at. When Yaxley and Snape approach the manor, Yaxley snarls and notes that there are peacocks on the grounds. He murmurs, with an edge of jealousy, that Lucius Malfoy always did well. Their grand estate, expensive pets roaming the property, and dimensions of wealth throughout the books and films really seem to support the argument that they're the wealthiest. However, they're not. In fact, I can think of 2 families richer than them right now, starting with the Lestranges. The Lestrange vault at Gringotts was one of the most well protected, and not just because of the Horcrux held inside, but also because of the immense stacks of gold inside. The door of the vault melted away to reveal a cave-like opening crammed from floor to ceiling with golden coins and goblets, silver armor, the skins of strange creatures, some with long spines, others with drooping wings, potions in jeweled flasks, and a skull still wearing a crown. Okay, so why were the Lestranges so wealthy? Well, the main reason for this is that the Lestrange family had old money. But it's not just their old money that made them so rich. You see, at one point, the Blacks, another family with old money, married into the Lestranges, and then the 2 worlds of money collided. Bellatrix Lestrange, who we know, was a pureblood witch that hailed from the Black family, and later married into the pureblood Lestrange family. Both the Black family and Lestrange families were wealthy in their own right, both stemming from the Sacred 28, a directory of truly pureblood families that still existed within the wizarding world. Bellatrix and her husband Rodolphus ended up with a large portion of the money from both family trees, and the combination of these fortunes made them immensely wealthy, even richer than the Malfoys. Most people think that these 2 are the wealthiest, but I think I know of someone even wealthier. The true wealthiest. Ever heard of the immortal philosopher? Enter Nicolas Flamel. I know what you're thinking. Wasn't he just some humble old fart that obsessed over alchemy? Well, it was a bit more than that. First of all, Nicolas Flamel exists in both our own world and the Harry Potter world. Flamel was a French scribe born in the 1300s in the city of Pontoise. He lived in Paris for the majority of his life, and spent much time there over the course of the 14th and 15th century. Flamel was such an influential figure in Parisian history that there is even a road named after him, called Rue Nicolas Flamel. On a day-to-day basis, Flamel worked as a scribe and manuscript seller, and ran 2 shops offering these services in Paris. Flamel achieved a great deal of success in his career, and as a result became quite wealthy. In the year 1368, Flamel would go on to marry his wife, Perenelle, a generous benefactress who had a great deal of money from her former 2 marriages. The joining of the 2 meant that they would become immensely wealthy. But what's interesting is that their wealth at this time was just at the tip of the iceberg. Flamel ended up living to somewhere between 666 and 670 years old, and that's thanks to a little object called the Philosopher's Stone. Ever heard of it? Flamel, an alchemical master, created the stone earlier on in his life, an object of exceptional wonder and magical properties. One of the unique properties of the Philosopher's Stone was that it allowed whoever possessed it to create one of the most powerful potions in existence, an elixir of life. Flamel capitalized on this property of the stone, and this is why he was able to live for such a long time. However, that wasn't the only property of the stone. Ever heard of King Midas and the Midas touch? Well, let me refresh you. King Midas was a figure from Greek mythology that had the ability to turn anything to gold, simply by touching it. Flamel's stone, though limited when compared with the powers of King Midas, held similar properties, and had the capacity to turn any metal into pure gold. A stone that can turn any metal into pure gold? Sounds like we may have a new contender for richest wizard. Flamel, of course, eventually dies, but in the 666 or 670 odd years that he existed on the planet, I'm sure he had 1 or 2 opportunities to turn objects into gold. In fact, I'm willing to bet that he capitalized on it. Add that to the already immense wealth that he and Perenelle held, and well, we've got a winner. What do you guys think? Did you expect the positively unassuming Nicolas Flamel to be the richest wizard? Who did you think it was? Leave your comments down below. Until next time, as much money and life as you could want, the two things most human beings would choose above all. The trouble is, humans do have a knack of choosing precisely those things that are worst for them.